Hi, I'm Chris Kinane, Research Director and Practice Leader for Supply Chain Management at ARC Advisory Group. Joining me today is Asena Denizeri, Vice President of Retail Solutions at Solvoyo. Asena, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, I know we have a lot to talk about, as we look into autonomous supply chain planning. But before we do, can you just give me a little bit of background on how you got involved in supply chain and a little bit about Solvoyo as a company as well?
Of course. So my journey started in the 90s when I graduated with a degree in operations research and industrial engineering, and went to work for a software company in Silicon Valley, doing pricing and revenue optimization for reservation-based industries like cruise lines, airlines, car rental companies, and hotels. So in the beginning, I was mostly focused on the demand planning side. And then we got acquired by a supply chain planning software company, which then later became part of Blue Yonder. Then I joined a retail company, Gap. I lived in San Francisco to help develop their analytics solutions to support merchandise planning and store distribution decisions. And after some years in the fashion retail, I went to run the global supply chain group for a healthcare device company. And that's where I really got involved in the end-to-end supply chain planning, and also got the first-hand experience in all the manual processes that are involved in connecting the dots across all the steps in demand planning, procurement planning, production planning, and order fulfillment. And I discovered Solvoyo 7 years ago when I crossed paths with the founder, Koray Doğan, who then had already set up Solvoyo back in 2005, after having participated directly in the rise of some best-of-breed supply chain planning solutions, and realized that solving the supply chain decisions in silos was not the way to go. So he set out in 2005 to build a better way of doing end-to-end planning. And we've been cloud native since the beginning, and we've been serving our customers since 2011. And our mission is to provide autonomous planning solutions using advanced technologies, including AI, ML, and optimization.
So your background sounds, I'd say, sort of what we think about when we talk about supply chain planning, and really about global supply chains, of that non-linear progression. So I think you've had a lot of very interesting different types of, jobs and roles that have probably made it that you are, that you're in the role that you should be now. So I want to jump into sort of the core of what we want to talk about today. So what is autonomous planning in the supply chain context? And can you give examples of autonomous planning?
Of course, yes. So at the core, autonomous supply chain planning entails making decisions to optimize the delivery of goods and services from suppliers to customers without need for human touch. So in a way, it's comparable to autonomous cars. So these decisions are made in a synchronized manner using real-time or near real-time data, machine learning and AI, and optimization technology, while having the humans kind of sit at the steering wheel, setting the goals and managing the parameters. So in order to achieve this, basically all the different decision points in supply chain planning, starting with demand planning, inventory planning, supply planning, be it via procurement or production planning, along with fulfillment and allocation, and even transportation planning, need to be integrated. So to get into some examples, I'd like to give you some real, examples from our customers covering retail and CPG industries. So for instance, in quick commerce business, where customers expect delivery within 30 minutes, every day for each product, planners need to decide how much to hold at each fulfillment center so that the limited capacity is used in the most optimal way. They need to balance minimizing lost sales versus minimizing waste, especially for ultra fresh and fresh products. And there is limited space at these micro fulfillment centers, though, so they have to be very smart about how much inventory to put in, right? So then there is the next level of the decision, which is how much inventory to hold at the central warehouse to replenish these MFCs. And if they're using cross docks, how to dynamically allocate receipts at the cross docks as they come in. So we do all of that as part of our integrated planning. And we take into account the needs of the stores based on their sales rates and their inventories to aggregate those needs at the DC level and provide procurement decisions as well. So we call this closed loop automation, going from at the micro fulfillment center, figuring out, the demands, the optimal inventory levels, and giving replenishment recommendations, then rolling them up to the DC or cross docks, and making that decision automated as well. So that whole loop is called synchronized planning in our world. And of course, the planners are still involved, but instead of kind of figuring out the math, one by one, they're really managing the input parameters to these plans, such as service level targets or shelf lives, and planning parameters like lead times and delivery schedules. And also they handle exceptions in the recommendations generated by the system. We can also expand this to the ecosystem of suppliers and get real-time updates on open orders. And the same flow applies to different types of retailers as well, be it groceries, specialty, fashion, e-commerce, direct-to-consumer, D2C business, as well as wholesalers. So another example is on the CPG manufacturing side. And there the problem gets a little bit more complicated because there's the whole production planning aspect. So there too, demand planning, inventory planning, supply planning, capacity planning, and production scheduling is integrated to create an autonomous planning solution that gives recommendations every day. And also, in addition, there is the order fulfillment and transportation planning steps as well. So Solvoyo platform solves for all these decisions in an integrated manner through concurrent optimization, which also leads to cost savings on transportation while, of course, reducing carbon footprint and making, smarter decisions in a more autonomous way saves not only, of course, human efforts, but also helps the environment as well.
Now, is autonomous planning feasible for all companies of all sizes, or do you need to start with a certain level of digital maturity?
That's a great question. We get that asked a lot. It's absolutely feasible to achieve this for all companies of all sizes and all levels of digital maturity. Some of our customers have started this journey with just a bunch of Excel sheets and manual processes. And on the other hand, some of the larger enterprise customers already had planning systems in place, but they were operating in silos and still making manual adjustments on the outputs of each and every system. So by integrating all of these steps, we can create an end-to-end digital process, a single source of truth, and make decisions faster and more agile. So the answer is yes. Anyone at different levels of maturity.
Yes, and that sounds great. I guess the big question then becomes, I'm sure every company loves to hear that, but how do you go about achieving this?
So it's a journey, of course, something like this doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't just happen in one step. We go 3 steps, we go through 3 steps. We call them digital, intelligent, and autonomous. So in the digital step, we integrate all the data sources to consolidate data on our platform, our cloud platform. Of course, while doing this, you need to consider the operation realities of the business as well as commercial rules agreed with the suppliers, so planners don't have to adjust the results continuously. So this means getting data that influence all of these decisions, real time or near real time. And that data basically includes sales data, inventory data, open orders, as well as master data for products, including their attributes, shelf lives, especially for fresh and ultra fresh, that's super important, or exit dates for fashion products, assortment at each locations, fulfillment location or store or channel. If we're doing production, then bill of materials for manufacturing or kit assembly. And the master data related to locations where inventory is held, and of course the vendor data or the supplier data, including lead times, minimum order quantities, delivery schedules, and any other additional operational constraints like resource plans, capacities, or plant promotions are usually typical internal data. And then we also use external data as well. Depending on the industry, the types of external data might vary. In some industries, it's weather. In e-commerce, it's website traffic or clicks or social media data. So we can basically consolidate internal and external data to create that digital backbone. Also in this step, what's important is to address the data quality issues and ensure that the data comes in clean and stays clean. So to do that, we implement master data diagnostics to assess the fullness, quality, and the consistency of the data received every day. And in addition, we set up the KPI dashboards and the control towers to start measuring the key supply chain KPIs, such as excess inventory and stock outs. So that's the first step of going digital, right? You get all the data and you start measuring, what that data is telling you. Next, we start working on the intelligent layer, during which we normalize the incoming sales data for stockouts, promotions, special days, any kind of events that might have biased the sales data and that might kind of pollute the baseline forecast. And we then layer on top what's going to influence the forecast going ahead. So again, weather or promotions or special days. And then we configure the forecasting engine and learning models, machine learning models, to provide the forecast as well as predictive alerts and start measuring the demand and supply variability, which then is used to set optimal inventory targets. And in the final autonomous planning step, now using everything that we've built so far, including the forecast and any inputs provided by the business, we provide recommendations for inventory targets, allocation, replenishment, procurement, production, fulfillment, and transportation every day, subject to all the business objectives and constraints and operational realities. And so in this loop, basically, the responsibilities of the planners evolve into making sure that the system knows what they're trying to achieve. So in terms of objectives, right? And also making sure that the data going into the system is clean and consistent. And anything that's going on in the supply chain, be it disruptions or special events, are also maintained. And basically, they also manage the service level targets for the company, right? There might be different groups of products that they want to make available at a higher probability than others. So they put in their service level targets and say, okay, for my, segment A, I want to achieve 99% availability, and for segment B, it's 95%. So inputs like these are maintained by the planners, while the system is giving optimal recommendations, taking into consideration all of these goals, objectives, and constraints.
So obviously one of the things with technology is that everything moves fast, right? So while the operational challenges and realities keep changing along with, the introduction of new technologies, the system you set up last year might already start falling behind given today's challenges. So how do you keep improving?
Okay, so we do a couple of things. So as part of our platform from day one, we start measuring the user acceptance rates. Whenever at any point where we give recommendations, be it forecast, be it replenishment to stores or procurement into DC or production plans or transportation plans, we track every action they take in the system and measure the level to which system recommendations were accepted as is. We call this user acceptance rate, UAR. So this is the key in keeping an eye on basically the level of automation that they start with and where they might start deviating from the recommendations. Because at the same time where they're inputting their revisions, we ask them the reason codes. Why are you making this recommendation? So this provides a closed loop system. And by monitoring these UARs and the reason codes, the system over time and of course the organization learns where they need to go next. So beyond that, of course, beyond what was deployed on day one, there might be other needs since the world we operate in is constantly changing and the platform needs to keep up with that. So what they start with in terms of functionality might not be sufficient in a year or two or in a few months, depending on how fast they're changing. And to do that, we have developed a configurable UI and parameter-driven analytical models. The configurable UI enables us to adapt to the realities of the business as their business processes change, such as maybe the number of steps in an approval process, or maybe they start doing new workflows, and maybe they want to expand the use of the system from short-term operational planning to medium-term planning or SNOP, or rough cut capacity planning, or vendor collaboration. We can enable all of those capabilities in our configurable UI and evolve basically over time, making it possible for them to adjust the system to their needs. And similarly, the backend models can evolve as well. Maybe over time, they want to add more demand drivers into their forecasting. That's possible as well. So each customer, has a unique automation journey. And we start out with what we call a minimum viable product, MVP. We deploy that usually within a couple of months, 2 to 3 months, and start making enhancements in an agile manner. So we take their, feedback, collectively prioritize next steps, and make the next level of enhancements. And since we're a software as a service company, our engagement with the customer is an ongoing one. We're by their side as they go through, all of their transformation journey. And usually, in a few years, what they deploy might look very different than what they deployed in day one. And we're able to do that using our agile methodology.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, with the customer journey being completely different for every single customer. So I want to thank you for sharing your insights with us today. I really appreciate you joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
All right. My guest today was Asena Denizeri, Vice President of Retail Solutions at Solvoyo. Thank you for watching.